A young black entrepreneur mastered the game of money and changed his destiny forever. This is Black Journey, where we honor the stories of struggle, dignity, and triumph. If you believe in stories that inspire power and pride, make sure you subscribe, join our journey, and never miss a story that could change your life. He was born in a place where success rarely made headlines, where dreams were often silenced before they could grow. His name was Darius Cole, the son of a single mother in a neighborhood that the world had long abandoned. The cracked sidewalks, the broken streetlights, the sound of sirens echoing in the night. These were the lullabies of his childhood. And yet, beneath the weight of struggle, Darius carried something unshakable: the belief that he was destined for more. His mother worked long shifts, sometimes 3 jobs at once, just to keep food on the table. She used to whisper to him late at night when the electricity had been cut off again, "Baby, the world won't hand you nothing. But if you learn, if you stay disciplined, no one can take knowledge from you." That became his compass. Knowledge, even as the system pressed down. Teachers who underestimated him, classmates who teased him for dreaming too big, police who eyed him with suspicion just for walking down his own block. Darius clung to that compass. In high school, he discovered numbers. Not just math in the classroom, but the way numbers could tell stories, the rise and fall of companies, the shifting tide of currencies. He read about Wall Street not as an observer, but as a competitor waiting for his chance to sit at the table. And yet he knew the reality. There were no invitations for kids like him. Black, young, from the hood, the system was not designed for his success. But instead of closing doors, that truth sharpened him. When he first heard about cryptocurrency, he was just 19. At the time, people laughed at it, called it fake money, a scam, a bubble. But to Darius, it was more than coins and codes. It was freedom. For centuries, wealth had been locked behind barriers black families were never meant to cross. Banks that denied loans, neighborhoods stripped of value, a financial system rooted in exclusion. But crypto? That was different. No gatekeepers, no bankers judging his worth by the color of his skin. Just vision, knowledge, and the courage to take risks. He dove deep. Nights when his friends were out, he was buried in online forums, reading white papers, studying charts. He learned how market psychology worked, the fear, the greed, the cycles. He began to see patterns no one else noticed, a rhythm beneath the chaos. His first investment was tiny, a few dollars saved from a summer job. But when that first coin doubled, tripled, then multiplied again, something clicked. Not just the money, but the principle. He could build wealth on his own terms. But it wasn't smooth. The market crashed. One night he watched nearly everything vanish, months of work erased in hours. The pain was sharp, but he remembered his mother's words. Knowledge can't be taken. He studied why he lost. He traced every mistake back to emotion. Fear when he should have held, greed when he should have been patient. From then on, he built his own strategy. Discipline first, profit second. At 21, he entered the stock market with the same hunger. The news said it was a playground for the rich, a language only Wall Street understood. But Darius knew better. He taught himself technical analysis, learned to read candlestick charts as if they were maps to hidden treasure. He didn't chase hype. He studied fundamentals. He found undervalued companies no one believed in, and he held them with conviction. When others panicked, he waited. When others celebrated, he prepared for the storm. Slowly, the numbers began to grow. What started as hundreds turned into thousands, and then into millions. By the time he was 24, Darius was no longer just surviving. He was building an empire. But what made his journey extraordinary wasn't just the money. It was the resilience, the defiance. Every trade, every investment was a rebellion against a system that had once written him off. Still, the world did not applaud him. There were whispers. He must have cheated. It's luck. People like him don't make it without cutting corners. He faced suspicion from institutions that refused to believe a young black man could outsmart their algorithms. He was stopped at airports, questioned at banks, looked at sideways when he walked into boardrooms. Success, he realized, did not erase discrimination, it magnified it. But Darius had long stopped looking for approval. He wasn't chasing validation. He was chasing legacy. And so, he made a promise to himself. His billions would not just be numbers on a screen. They would be tools. Tools to rebuild, to empower, to inspire. He began funding scholarships for young black students who dreamed of breaking into finance. He invested in startups owned by black founders who were denied opportunities elsewhere. He bought land in his old neighborhood, transforming abandoned lots into tech hubs, libraries, and safe spaces for kids to learn the very knowledge that had saved him. Each step forward reminded him of the nights he spent in the dark, his mother whispering wisdom into his ears. He carried her voice into every decision, every strategy. And when people asked him the secret to his success, he never pointed to luck or timing. He said discipline, knowledge, and the refusal to let this world define your limits. But his story was still unfolding. Because while the money grew, so did the weight of responsibility. For every victory, there were new challenges. Governments questioning crypto, markets collapsing without warning, communities looking to him as a beacon of hope. The journey from nothing to billionaire was not the end of the road. It was the beginning of something far greater, a movement. The day Darius crossed into billionaire territory was not marked by champagne or confetti. There were no flashing lights, no Wall Street headlines. It happened quietly, on a late night in his modest office, staring at the glowing numbers on his trading screen. The digits didn't even look real, 9 zeros lined up in a row. He leaned back in his chair, hands trembling slightly. Not from excitement, but from the gravity of it all. From the boy who once studied charts by candlelight to a man holding $1 billion fortune, it felt surreal. And yet deep down he knew the money was never the destination. It was the weapon. In the following months, the world began to notice. Business magazines tried to frame him as a prodigy, calling him the boy wonder of Wall Street or crypto's young genius. But rarely did they use the words he identified with, black, resilient survivor. Instead, they painted him as an anomaly, as if success of his kind was unnatural, something that had to be explained away. Every headline reminded him of the unspoken truth. To the world, his skin still carried the weight of centuries of stereotypes. Doors began to open, but behind every door was suspicion. When he tried to acquire property in upscale neighborhoods, banks stalled his applications. When he met with investors, they asked probing questions that white entrepreneurs twice his age were never asked. Even when he donated millions to build schools and hospitals, whispers followed. Where did this money really come from? For Darius, wealth had not erased the stigma. It had amplified it. But he refused to let bitterness poison his vision. Instead, he channeled the frustration into building what he called the Freedom Network, a foundation designed to break chains not just for him, but for everyone like him who was told they didn't belong in the financial world. The foundation offered free classes on crypto, stock trading, financial literacy, taught in community centers, schools, even prisons. His philosophy was simple. The greatest revenge against oppression was not anger, but ownership. Still, being at the top brought new battles. The crypto market was a wild ocean, soaring one day, collapsing the next. Governments cracked down, regulations tightened, and powerful institutions tried to undermine the very technology that had lifted him up. Each crash tested his resolve. There were days when billions evaporated from his portfolio in hours, days, when critics cheered his losses as proof that he was just a lucky gambler. But Darius was no gambler. He had built his empire on discipline, patience, and strategy. He didn't chase the market. He let the market come to him. And yet, even with all his mastery, there was one truth he could not escape. Money could buy security, but it could not buy justice. On a rainy evening, while driving through a wealthy suburb, he was pulled over. The officer didn't see a billionaire. He saw a young black man behind the wheel of a luxury car. He questioned Darius aggressively, asked whose car it was, demanded proof of ownership. Even after verifying everything, the officer sneered. Must be nice spending someone else's money. The humiliation burned, not because of what was said, but because it reminded Darius of what had not changed. In the eyes of many, no matter how high he climbed, he would always be forced to prove his worth. That night, as he sat in silence, he realized that his billions meant nothing if he could not use them to challenge the very systems that sought to diminish him. He expanded his foundation beyond education. He began funding legal defense programs for young black men and women wrongfully profiled. He supported organizations fighting discriminatory banking practices. He spoke openly about his own encounters, refusing to soften his words for comfort. His wealth gave him a microphone, and he used it fearlessly. But there was another side to his journey: the pressure. Every decision carried the weight of expectations. Communities looked to him as a savior. Investors expected him to be infallible. Critics waited for his downfall. The pressure grew so heavy that some nights he wondered if the dream had become a prison. Billionaire, yes, but free? Not entirely. It was during one of those nights, walking alone through the old neighborhood where he grew up, that clarity came. He saw kids running barefoot through cracked streets, the same streets he once walked. Their laughter carried through the air, unburdened, unbroken, and he realized wealth was not about escaping, it was about returning. Returning to lift, to heal, to inspire. The billionaire title meant nothing if he used it only to distance himself. His power lay in showing those kids that their dreams were not impossible, that the world's limits were lies. So he doubled down. He built a tech hub in the heart of his neighborhood, staffed with mentors who taught coding, finance, and innovation. He invested in startups led by young black entrepreneurs who had fire in their eyes but no capital. He purchased acres of land, not for mansions or malls, but for affordable housing projects that kept families from being pushed out by gentrification. His billions became bricks of change, laid one by one, until the community that had been ignored for decades began to shine with possibility. And yet the media rarely told that story. They focused on the numbers, the cars, the mansions. They framed him as a symbol of excess, not justice. Darius stopped caring. He knew his truth. He knew the late nights spent studying charts until his eyes blurred, the mornings his mother cried, with relief because bills were finally paid, the silent battles against racism that no headline would ever capture. His wealth was not an escape. It was evidence. Evidence that no system, no stereotype, no barrier was absolute. Still, he knew his journey wasn't finished. Wealth without wisdom was fragile. He had seen too many fall. Lottery winners, athletes, celebrities, rich one day, bankrupt the next. He refused to be another cautionary tale. So he crafted a philosophy that guided every choice. Invest long, diversify wide, and never let emotions control the strategy. He called it the 3 Pillars of Freedom, and he began teaching it everywhere he went. By now, the world could no longer ignore him. Governments sought his advice on digital currencies. Universities asked him to speak about financial innovation. Communities embraced him as a hero. And yet, Darius remained grounded, never forgetting the cracked sidewalks, the broken lights, the nights when food was scarce. Those memories kept him humble. Those memories reminded him that the true value of a billionaire was not in what he kept, but in what he gave. And so, as the sun set on another day, Darius Cole, once dismissed, underestimated, and doubted, stood as a living contradiction. A young black man in America, once defined by limits, now rewriting the definition of possibility. His billions were not just a number. They were a statement, a declaration, proof that resilience, knowledge, and unshakable dignity could turn a boy from nowhere into a symbol of everywhere. The older Darius became, the more he understood that money was never the true measure of wealth. It was a tool, yes, a powerful one, But a tool is only as valuable as the hands that guide it. He had spent years sharpening his strategies, years, proving to the world that a young black man from forgotten streets could rise into the ranks of billionaires. But now, as he looked at his life, he realized that the greatest battle was no longer for his own freedom. It was for the freedom of others. He began traveling not to luxury retreats or private islands, but to schools, community halls, and youth centers. Crowds filled the rooms wherever he spoke. People who had never set foot on Wall Street but carried dreams just as large. They came not only for his story, but for the hope that they too could carve their own path. And when he spoke, it was never about luck or shortcuts. It was always about strategy. He told them that success in crypto, stocks, or any investment was not about chasing the noise. The market, he would say, is a mirror of human emotion. It rises on greed. It falls on fear. If you let those same emotions guide you, the market will own you. But if you master yourself, you can master the market. His strategy, which he called the 3 pillars of freedom, became a philosophy not only for finance but for life itself. The first pillar was knowledge. He reminded his audiences that the system was designed to keep them uninformed, because ignorance was the easiest form of control. If you don't read, you'll be told what to think. If you don't study, you'll be told what to believe. But when you arm yourself with knowledge, when you study markets, history, and human behavior, no one can chain your mind. He encouraged them to learn continuously, to treat knowledge as a lifelong weapon. The second pillar was discipline. Darius explained how he lost fortunes early on, not because of bad information, but because of bad impulses. Fear and greed are the oldest enemies of wealth, he said. Discipline means sticking to your plan when others panic. It means walking away from quick money when you know it's poison. It means investing for tomorrow, not just for today. He told the story of how he once held a stock everyone laughed at, and years later it became a cornerstone of his fortune. Not because of luck, but because of discipline. The third pillar was ownership. If you don't own, you'll always be owned, he declared. Ownership to him meant more than money. It meant owning your time, your choices, your future. They want us to be consumers, not creators. They want us to rent forever, work forever, beg forever. Ownership breaks that cycle. Buy land, build businesses, own the tools of your survival. When you own, you cannot be erased. These 3 pillars became his message to the world: knowledge, discipline, ownership. And while they applied to crypto and stocks, they also applied to life. They were not just financial strategies, they were survival strategies, liberation strategies, dignity strategies. But Darius never sugarcoated the truth. He reminded people that his path was not easy. There were sleepless nights, crushing losses, and walls built to keep him out. He told them about the time he was laughed out of a bank meeting, the time an investor told him straight to his face that black men couldn't be trusted with money, the time he was profiled in his own neighborhood, even after he'd built schools there. These moments, he said, were part of the price. Success doesn't erase the world's hatred, but it gives you the power to fight it on your own terms. In one of his most memorable speeches, he stood before a crowd of young people in a packed gymnasium. His voice, steady and commanding, echoed through the hall. They told me I would never matter. They told me I would never make it out. They told me this world wasn't built for me. But look at me now. I am not here because of luck. I am here because I refuse to let their story become my story. And so will you. The journey is hard, but it is yours. Walk it with courage, with dignity, with fire in your chest, because if I can rise from nothing, so can you. The applause that night shook the walls. Some cried, some stood in silence, but all of them left with a seed planted in their hearts, the belief that impossible was just another word. As the years passed, Darius became more than a billionaire entrepreneur. He became a symbol of resistance, of possibility, of pride. His investments grew, his foundations expanded, his legacy spread across continents. But he never sought statues or monuments. His monument was in the children who picked up books instead of giving up, in the young entrepreneurs who launched businesses against all odds, in the communities that began to thrive because one man believed they were worth investing in. And when asked what advice he would give to anyone chasing success, he always said the same thing. Do not chase money. Chase freedom. Money is paper. It will rise. It will fall. It will test you. But freedom? Freedom lasts. Build knowledge. Practice discipline. And fight for ownership. And above all, believe in yourself when no one else will. Because the world may doubt you, but your belief in yourself is the most valuable asset you'll ever own. He paused whenever he said this, letting the words settle, because he knew the people listening weren't just hearing a speech. They were hearing a reflection of themselves. Darius Cole's story was never just about billions. It was about dignity, about rewriting the rules, about proving that a boy born with nothing could not only survive but rise, not only rise but lead, not only lead but inspire. His life was a testimony that the barriers of race, poverty, and discrimination were not unbreakable walls but challenges to be conquered. And so, as he stood at the peak of his journey, he looked not at the money in his accounts, but at the movement he had sparked, a movement of knowledge, discipline, and ownership, a movement that whispered to every young black child staring at a cracked ceiling in a forgotten neighborhood, your journey is not over, your story is not written. You are more than what this world has told you. Rise and write your own future. That was his legacy. Not the billions, not the headlines, not the titles. His legacy was the fire he lit in others, the fire to dream, to fight, to build, to own, to rise. And in the quiet of his soul, Darius knew that was worth more than all the wealth in the world.